Welcome in to the Late Night Gamecock Show. My name is Matt Anderson, and joining me, as always, is Alex Jones of the BigSpur.com. Alex, how you doing tonight?
Doing good, doing good. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm surprised you still have as much hair as you have because of the transfer portal and everything that's going on right now. What's that like, Alex, trying to track all that stuff?
Spring practice in and of itself. We got practices. Once a week we're pretty much going to practice, and then we have some type of press conference the first 3 days of first 3 days of the weekend. It's a crazy time, but it's a whole lot of fun though.
Oh, time out. You mean that spring practice is happening right now?
Yeah,
And baseball and softball? No. It's just the transfer portal, Alex. That's what you focus all of your attention on.
It seems like a good plan to me.
Well, tonight on the show, we're gonna talk about every sport that's going on right now at the University of South Carolina: baseball, softball, women's basketball, football. Like Alex just mentioned, is in spring practice, but a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight is women's basketball and then men's basketball. Women are in the Final Four for the fifth straight year. Pretty crazy what Dawn Staley's doing. But Alex, let's go ahead and roll the opening, and then we'll get right into the show.
Welcome to the Late Night Gamecock Show from Chief Sports, South Carolina. Here are your hosts, Matt Anderson and Alex Jones of theBigSpur.com.
So, Alex, it is the fifth year in a row the women are going to the Final Four, the seventh under Dawn Staley's tenure at South Carolina. And are Gamecock fans just spoiled at this point?
It's pretty incredible. That program has become. Dawn Staley has built it up, and now you got a Texas matchup, which I think is round 4 of the season. It's pretty crazy, but it's incredible.
Yeah, if you look back to 2017, and remember there was the COVID year, so there was no national championship that year, although I think Dawn did raise a banner for that because they were the undisputed number one team in the country. But 3 national championships since 2017. Alex, just like you mentioned, they do play Texas for the 4th time, and that's to go to the national championship. I looked at it earlier, and South Carolina is a 5.5-point favorite over Texas. There's been one game the Texas won, but the other 2 were I would say were not super competitive. We'll see what happens this weekend. But I think the other side of the bracket's very intriguing too, because you have UCLA and you have Connecticut. Both of those teams South Carolina lost to this season. So it's kind of like the revenge tour. You lost to Texas once. Okay, well, you beat them 2 times, maybe beat them a 3rd time. And then you go play UCLA or Connecticut, and it kind of just says, all right, well, down year for South Carolina, but we're still the national champions.
Yeah, South Carolina could almost go on like a little bit of a revenge tour in the Final Four, being that, I guess not really against Texas, just because you're 2-1 against them and won the SEC championship against them. But there's other 2 teams where 2 of your losses last year, so it could be a way to get another national championship, but also to get some revenge on some of those teams that found a way to get you in the regular season.
Well, we'll start with Connecticut and UCLA. Connecticut's an 8.5-point favorite. Connecticut might be the hottest team in the country right now. Let's not forget that Juju Watkins went down with an injury, and Southern Cal was the 1 seed in that particular side of the bracket, or in that little quadrant. Do you think that 8.5 is, if you were going to bet women's college basketball, do you think 8.5 is a good number in that game, Alex?
Whew, man, I'm not sure. UConn's playing really good basketball right now, and so maybe. But I mean, with UCLA and I mean Lauren Betts at center, like 20 points per game right now. I mean, she's been awesome, and I mean, I think 8 maybe a little bit high. I still think UConn wins that game and makes it to the national championship. I think that could end up being a little bit high, but I think UConn finds a way to win, but it's closer than that.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think I take UCLA to cover 8.5, and only because they are the best team in the country. They've beaten everybody that they've played except for a couple teams, but they beat South Carolina by 15. They number 1 overall seed. This is a situation where if I was UCLA's coach, I would actually be a bit like frustrated, angry, mad, like talking to my team about it. Like, you're an 8.5 point underdog to a 2 seed. So I would take UCLA to cover. I think UCLA is going to win the game, quite frankly. I think that they're the better all-around team, and I think that at some point, just like Alabama hitting 21 out of 52 threes or whatever it was, against who'd they play? Alex, do you remember? Who was that?
I'm blanking now. I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm blanking too. But then they they played Duke and they cooled off. I think UConn's due for a cool off, but I would love nothing more than for South Carolina versus UConn for the national championship, the 2 premier brands in women's college basketball. So I'm going to hope for that, but I do think UCLA wins. I think the Gamecocks win. They know the scouting report. They've seen these girls. The Texas has seen South Carolina too, but there's a weird saying in sports, Alex, where it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a season, but South Carolina's already won 2 out of 3. So I think it's going to be South Carolina. I think it's going to be UCLA, and I think that the girls are going to get it done and find a way to win back-to-back national championships. Alex, is it like, before we move on, is it kind of weird for you that the women aren't 16.5 point favorites in every game in the Final Four? Because it's weird for me that they've been the favorite for so long.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of felt like last year, like they were the overwhelming favorite rolling through that NCAA tournament. And I mean, not so much this year. I think that's just because, I mean, and when you look at it in the women's game right now, I mean, really you kind of see in the men's game too, the 4 teams that are in the Final Four are all, I mean, it sounds obvious, but they're all really, really good. I mean, like I mentioned, UConn on the women's side right now is playing great basketball. And I mean, you get to this point in the year, every game's going to be a challenge. But, I mean, Dawn State was proven she gets her teams ready to go when the Final Four starts and really when the NCAA tournament starts. And, South Carolina, I mean, they've kind of struggled in the first half here recently in these recent games. But I think that's going to be a key is to get started early. Maybe throw the first punch because some of these teams, I mean, Texas, if you get down early, it's going to be hard to get back in it. So I think that's kind of the key for this team in this first half against Texas. And if they find a way to make it national championship, I think they've got to get off to a good start and then see where it goes from there.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Sweet 16 matchup against Maryland and then the Elite 8 matchup against Duke kind of made people question or think about this team, but they're pretty good. Alex, before we move off of the NCAA tournaments, what's your prediction for the Final Four? We'll get that out of the way.
For the women's?
No. We already talked about. Yeah, we'll go ahead and give women's and give men's.
All right, so I mean, I got South Carolina win the national championship. They're going to win this game against Texas. Then I got them playing UConn again in the national championship, and I think they found a way to get that one done as well. And then on the men's side, I've been recently saying Florida is going to win it all, but I think Auburn is going to win. I think they're going to win the first game. Then I think they're going to win national championship. I think Bruce Pearl is going to have those guys remember what Florida did in Neville Arena in the regular season, and it's going to have those guys ready to go. And then I think they're going to be playing Duke. I think it's going to be Auburn-Duke in the national championship, and it's going to be Cooper Flagg versus Janiyah Broome. And Cooper Flagg's going to win the National Player of the Year, but I mean, I think Janiyah Broome and Auburn's going to win national championship.
Yeah, I got Florida over Duke still. I'm holding pretty firm. Florida scared the crap out of me last weekend when I was watching that game.
If Walter Clayton shoots like he did and made plays like he did last week, I mean, Florida could easily win that game as well. And that I think the Duke Houston game is going to be really good just from the way Houston plays defense and going up against Duke. But that Florida Auburn game's got a chance to be pretty electric.
Yeah, I think it has the potential to be the best Final Four ever. You have 4 number 1 seeds. We've seen it before. It doesn't always work out where the games are competitive. I think the last time it happened was, it was UCLA, North Carolina. I can't remember who else is in there, but like both of the Final Four games are kind of blowouts. So I hope we get 2 good games, and I'm looking forward to Monday night. I hope that game doesn't start at 9:49 p.m. because these NCAA tournaments are killing me. But moving on to softball, Alex, South Carolina took 2 out of 3 on the road against LSU this past weekend. They lost the first one, and then they won the doubleheader on Sunday. And I think it was Sunday or Saturday, Alex. I think it was Sunday. But
I think it was too, yeah.
Yeah, but so LSU was number 3 in the country coming into that series. South Carolina is now up to 9th in the country in the ESPN/USA softball rankings, 6th in the country according to D1 softball, 10th in the country in USA Today. I don't know what the preeminent softball rankings are. I don't know who does the best job or anything like that, but these girls are top 10 in the country in every poll, as high as number 6. I think something special is happening in Columbia, South Carolina this year. Alex, your thoughts?
Yeah, we talked about last week that Oklahoma series when you went on the road was going to pay dividends. Obviously, you lost all 3 games, but all 3 games are competitive, and you went into, I guess, one of the top environments in softball in Oklahoma, and the 3-time defending national champion, and you found a way you're competitive in every game, and that was going to pay dividends down the road. I think you saw that this weekend going to Baton Rouge and playing LSU, who at the time was number 3 in the country, and you get on Friday night, you lose, 11-3 in 5 innings, and then had the day off. I think it was because of weather going on Saturday, and then 8 inning game, 5-3 win, and you bounce back that way, and then have to do it again on the road again, 4-1. You win in that game 3, and it's like you mentioned, and we say it every week. It's impressive what Ashley Chastain Wood and her staff have done. Completely, kind of turn around this program all of a sudden. And tonight they went ahead and got the 2-0 win against Walford, and now it's another top 20 matchup. You got Ole Miss coming to town this weekend, and 2 games Saturday and Sunday on SEC Network. But I imagine it's going to be a pretty packed house over there with the way what that team's playing.
Yeah, so 28-7 on the season, like you mentioned. Ole Miss is top 20 in the country. I'm so excited, and we're going to go to a game here soon. It's kind of hard to get out of town right now, but we're going to go to a game, and I cannot wait. It's a small stadium, about 2,000 seats, but it's going to get loud and it's going to get proud. And I think that everybody in Gamecock Nation needs to go ahead and get ready for potentially hosting 2 rounds in the NCAA tournament on the softball side, and then potentially get into the softball College World Series. Baseball, Alex, baseball had dropped 7 in a row before last night. They did beat PC 11-1 in 7 innings. It was an ugly game. I felt like watching it, and then it kind of broke loose there towards the end. Ethan Petrie had an absolute mammoth home run. I think I texted you and I said Ethan just smushed that ball.
Yeah.
But looking at it, they lost to Tennessee. They lost all 3 games. It was in Founders Park. I don't know if they could have won 2 out of 3, but they definitely had a chance to win 1 out of 3. But out hitting the Tennessee Volunteers, I think it's a good sign, the number 1 team in the country. And now we just have to see what the rest of the SEC schedule holds. They're 1-8 in conference play. They probably should have 2 more wins. They should probably be, more like 3-6 in conference play. But I don't think there's a team in the country that's played a tougher schedule than the baseball team has at South Carolina so far to start.
Yeah, absolutely. And that Friday game, being that it was 11-7 final score, like South Carolina was kind of in it, but it just kind of felt Tennessee was controlling that game for the most part, and had that one really won for a little while. And then that game on Saturday, South Carolina battled their way and kept themselves in it and were right there and had chances. And that's kind of been the story of the season so far. Is think back to that Oklahoma game, game 3. South Carolina had its chances in that one, and couldn't get it done. And then against Tennessee on Saturday, Tennessee, we talked about going into the series with the way they can hit home runs. Like that was really the difference offensively. I mean, they would get a guy on, take it that Saturday, for example, got the single and then hit the home run and had the lead and didn't give it back up. And that's just what they do, and they're really good at it. But you did see some signs of life offensively, I thought, but that was kind of masked a little bit just about the home runs Tennessee was hitting. And you had to get that win last night, and it was probably good to get a run rule victory just to help a little bit. But now you got another test this weekend. It's never easy in the SEC, but now you got to go to Mississippi State, who are struggling themselves. So there could be a little bit of opportunity there in Starkville this weekend. But I think they've got to find a way to get some momentum in this weekend, and maybe that PC 11-1 win will help them get a little bit of life going.
Yeah, it's difficult right now, Alex, because I can't fault the baseball team for losing to ranked teams. Do I wish they had won 3-4 more games? Absolutely. Do I think they had a chance to win 2? Absolutely. But they are hitting 303 in conference play. So hitting 300 in conference play, like it's going to even out at some point. It's just the law of averages. So you look at it, and I think the bottom of the order is coming through now more than they have to start the season. And maybe Paul Maneri's figured out like the secret sauce for the Gamecocks. And you play Arkansas, you play Texas A&M, and you play Tennessee. It's difficult. It's not easy, but these kids haven't quit. I think with the way the bottom of the order is hitting right now, I think the top of the order just has to feel confident and swing away and know that they, don't have to carry the load, but it's still something in the 7th, 8th, 9th inning with South Carolina pitchers that I do worry about. They have got to find a way to get the last 6 to 9 outs in the game. And so far it's been a challenge. We joked about it last week. And if you played a 7-inning game, you might win a handful of these, or, at least you're only down 1 run going to the 7th. But I'm very optimistic about this team. They're going to have to find a way to sweep somebody. Maybe it happens this weekend. They're due. They really are. But this team, and John Whittle said it in the preseason, Alex, I think is probably 8th to 12th in overall talent in the pitching staff and the batting order and in the field in the SEC.
Yeah, you mentioned it. It's those late innings a lot of times in this SEC slate that they're getting into. I mean, again, you mentioned that Oklahoma game. I mean, they had just make a few plays defensively too late in those games, and South Carolina maybe has 1 or 2 more wins. So you got to find a way to get it to that 7th, 8th, 9th inning, and then they've got to find a way they are there in that opportunity to close it out, and they just haven't, for the most part, been able to do that yet.
Yeah, my bad. It's not Texas A&M. It's Oklahoma. Good catch there, Alex.
But
Alex,
didn't catch it. Yeah.
Oh, I called it. I was like, I don't think that's right. But Alex, before we hit a sponsor break, let's get a quick spring football update. Anything you want to talk about, from recruits to players that are surprising, depth chart, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I think some of the big storylines so far is a few things this week actually that were announced in Shane Beamer's press conference. Bakari Swain seems to be in good standing with the team right now, and Shane Beamer said, expect sooner rather than later for him to return. I think that's pretty huge news for South Carolina defensively, just because when you look at him, you maybe could pencil him in as that starter opposite of Judge Collier at corner, and they've got South Carolina has a lot of options there in the secondary to go for it, especially that corner spot. You got Miles Norwood who can play there, Braden Cisse, some of those younger guys. Then he can do some position flexibility, but I mean, we saw kind of the light maybe starting to come on for Bakari Swain when he got in there, and I think he could be a really good player. So we'll see. There's no exact timeline right now for when he can return, but that is a good update as far as his stance goes. And a few injury updates that were probably not so good on the front. 2 transfers: Jalen Brown, the edge from Missouri, who transferred in this offseason, was injured. I think I'm not sure when it happened, but sometime in spring practice, and he's not going to be back for the rest of spring practice. And Nick Sharp, who was potentially a guy that was going to be in the running for a starting guard spot, maybe that right guard spot, is also injured and won't return for spring practice. So wasn't too specific on what happened or the injuries or their timelines, but those 2 guys, that they won't return for spring practice. So that's some of the storylines right now. We'll see. Obviously you got the special teams kicking, or the special teams battles. You got kicker, punter, long snapper, all those battles going on. And I thought one thing that was interesting that Shane Beamer mentioned yesterday or whatever day I think it was Tuesday that we talked to him was, he's talking about we don't have a quarterback 2 right now, and I think that's something when in the preseason or in the offseason when we were looking at it, you maybe thought Aaron Nolan had the inside track for the number 2 spot, and maybe he still does. But I mean, I think Cutter Woods and Dante Reno have taken steps forward, and I've heard Cutter Woods has been off to a good start too, and we saw what he can do in high school at Westside. I mean, he was a winner, and then he threw for a crazy amount of yards at Westside. So I think you can still see Aaron Nolan being that number 2 guy. But you also have to. Luke Doty also has been working some at quarterback. When we've been out there, he's had the green quarterback jersey on, and I think a lot of that goes to just his experience. I mean, he's a guy who was really right in line to start in quarterback in Shane Beamer's first year, and then had the injury, and it all kind of went from there. But he's an experienced guy who can help those younger guys in a room, because even when you throw in Lenora Sellers in this mix, like it's a pretty young quarterback room overall. Yeah, I mean, you got Lenora who's in his second year as a starter. You got Cutter Woods who's in his first year in college. Aaron Nolan, played at Ohio State last year, but no, I don't think he ever took the field at Ohio State. So he's inexperienced. And then Dante Reno as well. So a young quarterback room overall, but I think just having a guy like Luke Doty in there to kind of help out while also doing some of his special teams work and some work at wide receiver as well would help those guys. But they'll go to Williams-Brice on Saturday for their first scrimmage, and we'll see what we can pick up from there. And then I think we're 2 weeks now away from the spring game on that Friday.
It's coming.
Yeah, it's crazy. Spring practice is rolling right along, but those are some of the big takeaways, and we'll see what else pops up.
Well, Alex, I will say if you needed an inside source, I know someone that works at the stadium. Maybe you can take the elevator up on Friday night, sleep in a press box, and then you can watch the scrimmage. But really, really quick, Alex, the spring game is not going to be televised this year. It's something that Shane talked about today. I do think it's the right move, even though I hate it. But if there's only 2 SEC teams that are going to televise a spring game, it's so vanilla anyway, but at the same time, there's no reason. And if you have the opportunity to have a SEC 1-hour show on your program that you can record, you can send to recruits, right, and you can still have as many recruits as you want at the spring game. There's nothing that says
Yeah, I was going to say it'll be a pretty loaded list for the spring game. So, and not to interrupt you, but that was kind of his point when he was talking about the spring game not being televised, is, having that show, the 30-minute, I think it's either a 30-minute or almost an hour-long show of, just talking about the program would be huge for recruiting to go along with what recruiting does, or what the spring game does for recruiting, because South Carolina really brings in a lot of people for the spring game, and it's always a huge recruiting event for them. So kind of, I guess maybe you get 2 pluses there by having the recruits in for the spring game, and then obviously already bringing your fans in, but then all the fans and recruits get to see the kind of an inside track to the program that sometimes you don't see, even though Justin King and those guys do a great job over there of kind of giving that inside track into what is going on.
Well, Justin King and those guys, they have their social media presence, whoever follows them, but ESPN, it's on ESPN. You never know who's going to be flipping the channels during the summer. And wow, here's South Carolina. I'll actually watch it to see all the other programs. I want to see what they look like. That's pretty interesting to me. Really quick, Alex, before we hit a commercial break, or sponsor break, I should say. And by the way, we have a newer sponsor on the show tonight, so it's not just going to be D's Wings. So pay attention. But Alex, Brady Smeagol, it looks like Gamecocks might be moving on, maybe slow playing him. Maybe he's not that interested. I don't know. But I did see that Landon Duckworth had his name on that 5 points bar today. Thoughts on quarterback recruiting and where you see that going?
Yeah, Springer was in last weekend for a visit, and we'll kind of see where it goes. He's all the way on the West Coast. So I think you had to worry. You wonder, maybe is he going to stay? Washington's a school to for him. Maybe does he come all the way to the East Coast? And we'll see kind of what South Carolina does. They're still after Landon Duckworth, and you can see why. That guy, he's really, really good, but there's going to be some challenge for him too, because Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin are really coming after him right now, and so we'll see. Obviously he was already committed at one point, but it seems like he's already building a connection with Mike Shula and Shane Beamer, those guys, and we'll see if he gets in before his official visit weekend, and we'll see how that quarterback recruiting goes. But if they don't land out of those guys, you have to imagine somebody's going to pop up because that's, I mean, with the way recruiting works, you always have somebody popping up here and there at those positions.
Well, I'll never forget, Alex, you and I in June watched Cutter Woods, and we watched the coaches like just gushing over him, and then all of a sudden Cutter Woods might be QB2. So you never know. I mean, you and I both left that being like, okay, like he's better than Wake Forest. Like they need to get him. So
it can happen that quick.
Yeah. Well, Alex, how about you hit our 2 sponsor breaks and we come back? We're going to be talking all about the men's college basketball portal.
Mike here for one of the better dining options in the capital city. You know, when I first moved there, I asked people around the radio station, where are the best wings? Well, the consensus was D's Wings. That was then. Today, they still have the best wings, but it's so much more. Now in their new location at 415 Meeting Street in West Columbia, yeah, they get voted the best wings on a routine basis. Yes, they get voted the best sports bar on a routine basis, but they're not just about wings, and really, they're not just a sports bar. It is a family-run local restaurant and bar with 20 TVs and 25 beers on tap. And how about these daily specials? Every Monday night at D's, you've got 75-cent wings from 4 until closing. Tacos on Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, 18 wings and a pitcher of beer for $29. You've also got ribs and oyster bucket specials on Thursday. And no matter how big the party is, 20 or more, no problem. Just call ahead of time and they'll take terrific care of you. They'll do takeout as well. And guess what? A human will answer the phone and take the order. Billy and his staff do an outstanding job. Check out D's 415 Meeting Street in West Columbia.
You don't have to be Scottish to enjoy South Carolina's most unique family festival, a celebration of Celtic culture. Tartan Day South, built by Culpeper Wood. Experience adventure, Highland games, music, dancing, animals, crafts, rides, a car show, and a parade. Kick off your weekend with a Celtic concert on Friday and a full day of affordable fun and festivities on Saturday at the historic Columbia Speedway, April 3rd through 5th. Get your tickets and more information at tartandaysouth.com. Your first visit won't be your last.
Welcome back into the Late Night Gamecock show. That Tartan Day Festival, man, if I didn't have other plans this weekend, I would be all over that. There are so many fun events that are going to happen. And look, you know, we all laughed last year when Mike talked to the folks there and they said, hey, we were on an ad. But everybody that went there loved it. So if you're in the Columbia area and the Lexington area, make sure you hit that up. But Alex, I think it's time to turn our attention to men's basketball. A lot is going on right now, right?
Yeah, it seems it's not going to be ending. I mean, it's the portal period is just crazy right now. I mean, we talked about last week the number of players that entered that first few days, and it's at a record highs. And it seems like players are entering just about every day. And obviously, we'll dive into some of the most recent attrition-wise for South Carolina that happened recently, but then also all these portal guys that South Carolina's had with a new name that entered today as well.
Yeah, so you look at the portal. Nick Pringle is taking advantage of that JUCO year. He's going to be somewhere else. Zach Davis, 3 years at Carolina, going somewhere else. Arden Conyers, redshirt and played this year. Actually going to UNC Charlotte, I think I saw today. And then you have Cam Scott, who entered the portal last night. Real quick, I'm just going to run through this, Alex, and tell me if you have any different opinion. With Nick Pringle, he didn't fit at South Carolina. I don't know if he can fit somewhere else better. Yeah, maybe a more running gun lob type offense. I mean, Alabama fit him perfectly, but you're not going to go to the NBA if you're just that kind of player. There's too many of them out there. Zach Davis, he definitely regressed this past year. I wish him well. I think that if he had decided to be, you know what, it's tough. I don't want to be too critical of players. I really don't, because there were so many players on this roster this past year that were, you know, square pegs and round holes. And Zach Davis fell into that.
I think with Zach Davis too, like everybody talked about the next step for him was the 3-point shot. And I think maybe it was forced a little bit too much, like just trying to get the 3-point shot. And it almost felt like it took away from his, type of slashing game where you saw last year. I mean, we'll talk about Michi Johnson later, but was going back and watching through some games recently to watch Michi Johnson. You could just see watching even Zach Davis there. He was so good at slashing and driving the lane and finishing. And I think he'll land somewhere. I think we saw recently some of the programs that reached out, and he's one that I think he'll be okay.
Yeah, and then you have Cam Scott. Well, Arden was a player that I had high hopes for. He still needed to get stronger. It looked like he lost some muscle mass over the season. Those guys are running a lot, but in the summer he looked a little bit more physically fit. Arden Connors is a guy kind of like Cam Scott that I think that maybe like two or 3 years from now, like maybe as a junior or senior, they'd be really, really good. And I'm gonna speak to Cam for a second. Cam has immense talent, but for whatever reason, the light bulb didn't go off for him his freshman year, and that's normal. We talk about freshman wall all the time, and I think Cam and Arden are gonna be really, really good players. But at the same time, Alex, right now with the transfer portal, it is free agency. You have to get better year over year. And if you don't want to invest in making a guy a great junior or senior, then don't do it, because there's no guarantee they're going to be on your team as a junior or senior.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with both of those guys, and I'll be interested to see where both of them are once they, as you mentioned, get to that junior and senior class. I think they do have potential, and we'll see where they end up.
And who knows? Maybe they pull a Michi and they come all the way back. Who knows?
Never know these days.
Yeah, you don't. And then when you look at graduation, Jamari Thomas graduated or finished his eligibility. Somehow he's in the transfer portal. I can't fathom how it's going to work out. But like I said today on the show with JV, he has felt confident for a month or two that he was going to get an extra year. Alex, I doubt you have anything more on that, but
yeah, I don't have anything else on that. Like just looking through, you see, I wonder how it's going to happen just when you look at how many games he's played each year in his first 4 years. But it's another that we just said, you never know. Some of these things that's with the NCAA and the eligibility right now, you really never know.
Yeah, and then you have Jacoby Wright. Want to give a nod to Jacoby. Great Gamecock, stuck through the transition. Probably had a better junior year than senior year. Was always undersized, but fought hard, and just nothing but kudos to him. Nothing but kudos to Benjamin Bosman-Verdonk. He did everything you could ask for as a player at South Carolina, especially a guy that was not going to play major minutes, and he got his law degree. He has like 2 degrees, maybe, and 3 degrees at this point. Really proud of Benjamin Bosman-Verdonk, and don't underestimate what he meant to the team over the last 2 years. He meant a lot. But Alex, what does that mean? That means that 46.5 points per game is out the door. It means that 20.2 rebounds per game is out the door. And it means that 9.3 assists per game are out the door. Is there any good news in that? The only good news I can think of is that team went 2-16 in SEC play this year. So losing a lot. But and you tell me if I'm wrong, I don't think any player that left the program via transfer or graduation is irreplaceable.
Yeah, and I think that's just kind of the day and age in college basketball right now. Like South Carolina's not the only team that's having to replace those type of numbers and stats. Like it's just with the way the transfer portal works and all that. Like that's not uncommon, and I think that's something you're going to continue to see more and more of. It's not just going to be a South Carolina team. I mean, think about Arkansas last year. I mean, they had to replace just about, I think it was their whole roster pretty much was gone when Kyle Perry got there. And I think right now, I saw that Indiana doesn't have anybody returning off of their roster as well. So
Kentucky just went to the Sweet 16 with nobody on their roster.
Right. Yeah. It's just that type of day and age in basketball right now.
Yeah. And even Kentucky, like going back to the preseason, there were a couple people that put them in the top 25. But most people just said, hey, it's going to take Mark Pope a year. And it didn't take him a year. He figured it out, and still can't break that Sweet 16 curse that Kentucky has right now. but really, really, really good team that he put together. If you look at Trayson Eaglestaff, the best way I can explain him, and I've talked to some national people about him as well, because I haven't watched all of the North Dakota, South Dakota State games for the last 3 years. He's a shooter. He shot 37% over his career on 545 attempts. Like you can't do that if you're a bad shooter. He drew 5.2 fouls per 40 minutes, according to KenPom. That's a really, really good number, because if you draw 3 fouls in either half, you're getting closer to the bonus. Career 75% foul shooter on 247 attempts, scored 1,360 points at North Dakota. And I think the bigger number here, Alex, is he has a career 1.8 turnover per game rate. And that's the thing that plagued the Gamecocks so much, is turnovers.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at the points per game and some of the stuff he did against Alabama, and then that 51-point game I think it was that he had. But he
Against
also
South Dakota,
the turnovers. I mean, that's a good stat for him to go along with his shooting numbers. And you mentioned that's kind of what plagued South Carolina. I mean, they just had droughts of really turnovers that would kill them in games, and the turnovers just continued to rise. It felt like, but you kind of see an emphasis starting to kind of be put on that. But back to his shooting ability, we'll talk about this. I mean, we can bring it up with just about every guy that they're adding so far. But when you watch South Carolina this year, they had so many open shots that that Lamont Paris either drew up for coming out of timeout or just a set play, and they just couldn't knock them down this year. And now you can really see with Eaglestaff, really, for one, like that guy, a lot of times when he's wide open, he's going to hit it. And so and we think back to that NCAA tournament team, when they had wide open shots for the most part, they hit it. Talon Cooper, BJ Mack, Michi Johnson. So that's what South Carolina had to get. It was one of the things, other than point guard, which we'll dive into pretty soon here. But I mean, shooters was one thing they had to get, and you can see right now there is an emphasis on that. And Eaglestaff's one of the top shooters really in the portal, I think, right now.
Yeah, I don't think Eaglestaff's going to be a guy that's going to be a slasher or anything like that. Like he was brought in to shoot, and if you read John Whittle's article in the Big Spur, and if you're not a member of the Big Spur, go check it out. But it basically said, like, I'm here to shoot, I'm here to score, and 3 points are greater than 2 points. That's the NATO special. So hopefully that works for South Carolina. Michi Johnson, I think that's really fun and really a cool story that he found his way back to South Carolina. He's a kid that he had his best years under Lamont Paris. So kind of a no-brainer for me. I don't think anyone needs us to explain what Michi Johnson is or isn't. You've all seen him play for 2 years.
Right. And I think when you look at Michi Johnson's game, there are certain things that he brings to the table that South Carolina was missing. One, I mean, as you mentioned, we all know the type of shooter he is. Like when he gets going, it can be really good, and he can single-handedly win you games. And that's something, again, that South Carolina missed this year, especially when Miles Studi went down. And Miles Studi didn't get off to the best start, but you saw that Clemson game where when he got going, he almost pretty much won that game for South Carolina. But with Michi Johnson, I think some of the things you see with him, the way he can drive, his first step is crazy quick, and he can drive to the rim and finish at the rim. South Carolina was missing some of that this year. He went on that drive, he can find open guys, and I think some of what they missed too is just his mentality that he brings to the table. And I think there is a little bit, he kind of, the players say that when players have that dog mentality, like Michi Johnson does have that, and I think that was missing a little bit this year too. So he knows Lamont Paris' system, and Matt and you and I have talked about having to have continuity with some of the returning players back for Lamont Paris' system. I mean, just because he was gone a year doesn't mean Michi's going to forget Lamont's system, and I think that's big because he'll be able to pick up right where he left off. And you have to imagine, with everything that he went through, he's hungry to get back out there, and he's going to be in an environment that he's comfortable with and a system that he's comfortable with.
Absolutely. You look at Kobe Knox. He's the recent commitment that happened today. He's probably a shooting guard. Maybe he can slide to small forward. But one of the big things that piqued my interest in him, Alex, is he started 71 of 97 games in his 3-year career. Started at Grand Canyon 2 years ago. Gamecocks have played Grand Canyon before, and Bryce Drew's been there, I don't know if he's still there, but he was there for Kobe. So I like to find players that have good coaching staffs and good guys around them that can get the most out of them. But in college, he's a career 8 point per game, 2.5 rebounds, and 1.4 assists per game. But the big thing, and we talk about Eagle staff having 1.8 turnovers per game, this guy, Knox, only has 0.8 turnovers per game. And just mentioning how many games he started and the minutes he's played, that's huge. Like, I really do think that 75% of South Carolina's turnovers are walking out the door via transfer or graduation.
Yeah, that's you can again with the shooting. We said that's something South Carolina's looking for, but preventing turnovers is another thing that South Carolina's looking for in their portal. You can see with these guys' numbers that's an emphasis, and I'm intrigued by Knox. I think he's somebody who can give you some good minutes off the bench. Like I think when you look, maybe he's not going to be that starter, but he's a guy who can come in off the bench, and we'll see kind of where he matches up defensively as well. I think that's something that kind of want to learn more about. But one number with him, a number that really kind of caught my eye was. He this year went from last year he shot 57% from the free throw line to this year he was shooting 76.7% from the free throw line. So you kind of mentioned his experience, a guy that started 71 games and played 97 in total, and he's done it at a fairly high level at USF that playing basketball in the American Conference. So I think it's that's another solid pickup for Lamont Paris, and we'll kind of continue to learn more about him and see what else they do. And that's kind of what we probably can move into is just the numbers wise at those positions because they've brought in a fair amount of guards right now, and you mentioned that he can maybe slide play a little bit of the three, but I'm interested to see what your take is on the numbers so far they brought in at these different positions.
So right now, assuming Conroy Boyle stays, and look, I don't know if he's going to stay or not. I really don't. I think that he's going to be 21 years old by the draft next year, still a really young kid. Like I said today on the Inside the Gamecock show, you kind of have a little bit of leverage. Like, I don't have to go. People talk about your second and third contract in the NBA and the money you're giving up. But if you actually look at the numbers, and I've done it, the amount of first-round picks that get their second contract is not very high. And that third contract where you're making – once you have the 10-year veteran status, you're making $40 million a year. Like, I don't know if Colin's going to be a top 15 player in the NBA. So when you look at that stuff, it makes it a little more compelling to say, all right, well, you're going to need to make about if he's a first round pick, a lottery pick, he's going to make about $2 million next year. And I don't see anything that says he won't be a lottery pick next year. It's not like he's 24 years old. He's still 21. So Colin has a lot of things to think about. But so, Alex, I'm not going to ask you, like, what is Colin going to do? Because we don't know. We know he's going to go through the NBA draft, combine, go get all of his numbers, all of that kind of stuff. Like, I would not be surprised to see Colin declare for the NBA draft. But remember, there is an early withdrawal deadline that he'll have to hit and make a decision. So if Colin's on the roster, you got 2 spots. If Colin's off the roster, you got 3 spots. And look at the guards. Go ahead.
I was just saying, I think, obviously it's not official with Miles Studi and his waiver, but I think you and I probably feel both pretty good that there's a good chance he's going to get that.
Yeah, the big thing for him, and like what I said when he went down, is like a blood clot in your leg is nothing to that's scary. Like, don't underestimate what that is. Like, he's still got to get medically cleared, even if he gets cleared by the NCAA. Right. So that might be 3 or 4 spots. I mean, I think we both agree that having Miles Studi next year is better for South Carolina than not having Miles Studi, because you talk about those shot makers and what Lamont did to get to South Carolina in the NCAA tournament. Last year was a lot of shots that went up with 5-7 seconds on the shot clock. And now you got some guys that can make it. And we'll get to that in a second. But, looking at guards, you got Michi, he's a senior. Morris, he's a junior. Eli is a freshman. And Kobe Knox is a senior. One other thing on Kobe Knox, he does have 2 brothers that have played SEC basketball. What's his name? Kevin Knox, I think, is his brother who plays for the Knicks or something like that.
Yeah.
And then Carter Knox was another 5-star, and he plays for Arkansas. He was committed to Kentucky under John Calipari, went to Arkansas. So really, really good bloodlines. You look at the wings. Trace and Eaglestaff and Miles Studi are probably going to play the most minutes on the wing this year. I think this is a year that South Carolina is probably going to play more guys that are like 6'5", 6'6", maybe even 6'3", on offense and defense, because you got to play both sides of the court. Probably going to be more like an Eddie Fogler type offense. But then you have Grant Polk, he's a freshman. And then you have Colin Murray Boyles, we'll see, as a big. Oku Federico. I will say, like, don't discount him, because he did play professionally this year. I don't know how he has eligibility playing professionally. I guess he didn't take $1 or a cent over there in Helsinki. But then you have Chris Osadoko, Jordan Butler, EJ Walker, and Hayden Osimhen. I like all of these guys, to be honest with you. So point guard's the big issue, but Oku has an older brother, Federico, who played for Texas Tech. He went to the Elite Eight. He's a 6-5 guy. Jordan Butler, I think he showed flashes, and it's always nice to have a big that can shoot a three. But, this team is going to look a lot more like a Wisconsin team, in my opinion. You look at Hayden and you look at Grant Polk. Those are guys that stay at Wisconsin for 3-4 years and just become elite college players. I don't want to say Final Four, not saying Final Four, but NCAA basketball tournament team kind of players. And then with Eli Ellis, Alex, 6 foot, he's undersized, but dude has a heart of a warrior. He's a bucket getter. And I think that's the biggest difference that we're going to see for this Gamecock basketball team this season, is the guys that can get a bucket. And maybe it's a crazy three that Eli Ellis shoots or Michi shoots, or it's the last 5 seconds in the shot clock and Jordan Butler hits a straight on three, or Miles Studi hits a corner three or a wing three. And don't forget Michi. So, this team, I think, will be better next year. So your thoughts on just this overall roster before we get to what they need in the portal?
Yeah, I like what they're doing so far. We talked about it before. The big key is the point guard spot. That's a spot that we've seen how important that is. You can really say just in college basketball overall, when you look at the teams that have the most success, they have really good point guards. But really, in Lamont Paris' system, they have to have a really good point guard, and not a really good a point guard that fits his system and fits what Lamont Paris wants to do, and that's what they're looking for. And we'll see how that kind of shakes out. But obviously, that was number one priority coming into the season, was to find a point guard, and that's going to continue, because that's we talked about how Talon Cooper was the straw that stirs the drink. Well, it's this next point guard can be that too, with what the shooters they have on the outside, and then maybe potentially a Colin Murray Boyles if he does decide to come back down the post. But then with that other spot, I think you got to go and see what you can do in the paint as well. I think it'd be huge for South Carolina for Jordan Butler to take another step forward. But you did see some flashes there, kind of towards the end of the season, of him. Maybe the light's starting to come on a little bit. He was being aggressive, attacking the rim, and we know what he can do from a shooting standpoint. But it's going to be interesting to see, just how the rest of this portal class shakes out and things moving forward. But, I think you have to think that top priority continues to remain point guard.
Yeah. If Colin goes pro, it's going to be difficult, because this April 7th deadline is coming up. And that's when you can front load a lot of these NIL contracts. Now, there's a school of thought that says, don't front load the NIL contracts, especially for a 1-year guy, because you pay him all that money or her all that money, and then what happens? But I think at the end of the day, Alex, they have at least 2 spots left at minimum. They have not addressed the monkey in the room, which is point guard. Michi's not a point guard. Eli Ellis cannot run point guard as a freshman. Maybe he can as a sophomore or junior. Morris, despite his best efforts to follow Talon around like a little puppy, he can't run point. They got to find 2 point guards at minimum. So let's see what happens there. And then if Colin leaves, they're going to have to find a portal big. I'm not as worried about like the big guys as a lot of people are. I think that it's going to be a guard-oriented team. It's going to be a smaller-oriented team, and I think it's going to be a team that is going to shoot a lot of threes, shoot a lot of twos. I don't think you have to rely on the paint, but yeah, it'll be something to monitor. And the Gamecocks have 4 days, maybe 5 days to figure all that out, and we'll see who enters the portal. I mean, Alex, I'm looking at it right now, and I'm just looking at 24/7 Sports. Bennett Sturts has already committed to Iowa. Donovan Dent, UCLA. Jacoby Gillespie, who I thought would be a really, really good fit for South Carolina, is probably going to go to Tennessee. Then you have Dedan Thomas. He went to LSU. Nigel Pack has been around the block. He'd be a good commitment. Nathan George from Georgia Tech. Look, we'll have to look at everything here. Malachi Smith, Barrington Hargreaves, Kwamari Peterson, Jalen Jackson, Jaden Pierce. Like they'll find a point guard, but I think they need to find two, and that's I guess where I'll leave it.
Yeah, I mean you hit the nail on the head. I 100% agree that you got to find at the very least one. I mean that's without question, no doubt. You got to find one, and wouldn't be opposed to seeing them maybe adding one more as well, just for what you mentioned, just to add more depth, I guess, to that point guard spot.
Yeah, if you find two, you hope that one hits, and then one can be the minute and a half until an official timeout, a media timeout, or you can use Michi or Eli in that situation. But they got to find somebody. I don't think Morris or Kobe are going to be guys that can handle it even for a minute and a half. We saw it 2 years ago when Talam went out, like we couldn't even get the ball over half court. So
yeah,
got a lot to work on, but I think this has been a fun episode, Alex. I think it's been an informative one, and all this stuff is going to continue to shake out. So we'll have a lot more next week. Just like we said earlier, the women are in the Final Four. They're going to play Texas and the winner of UConn UCLA. You got the softball team going to play against is it Ole Miss?
Ole Miss.
Yeah, Ole Miss, another top 20 team. So make sure you watch that. Baseball team's going to play against Mississippi State this upcoming weekend. Tough place to play, but let's see what they can get going. And then spring football never stops. Recruiting never stops. So we'll be all over it next week, and I think we'll have a more finalized pieces of the puzzle for the men's basketball team and see what they need to go find. But for me and Alex, any parting shots before we get out of here?
No, we hit it all tonight. Obviously, you mentioned spring football is still rolling along. That's got a few more weeks, but this portal is obviously not stopping, and we'll see where it all takes. But you got women's basketball this weekend, so it should be a whole lot of fun this weekend moving forward and into next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Celebrate the women's Final Four. It's a big deal. People take it for granted, but it's a big deal, and hopefully those girls can get cut down some nets. And then softball does well, baseball does well, and then basketball, we'll see what they do at point guard. But I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. I say it every episode, but when you join us, you give us the most valuable thing you have, which is your time. Alex and I both very much appreciate it. And if you ever want to reach out to us, you can find us on the Big Spur. I think our Twitter handles are up there, X handles, whatever they're calling it now. But just let us know if we can help you in any way. And we appreciate all of you, and we will talk to you next week. Have a good one. See y'all.